Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manty, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Ginger Sloan, owner of Zliderz. Thank you very much for joining me today, Ginger.
Thank you.
All right, before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use, or just a thumbs up on YouTube. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, Ginger, I wanted to start by asking how you got involved in the cannabis industry.
Well, it was really not intentional and just by chance. Personally, I had not been a cannabis user at any point in time in my life. But as it became legal in Oklahoma back in 2018, we are a medicinal state, not recreational. I have my mother who has severe debilitating health issues, primarily arthritic of nature, fibromyalgia, those that she ended up being a perfect candidate for help with both CBD and THC. So that is what actually got me interested in the market itself. I saw that I was able to, within a 2-week period of time, detox my mom off of narcotics that she had been on for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, I became a real believer. It was me seeing that, and my core competency is healthcare. I've had a healthcare technology firm for 28 years now. So I take this industry seriously. And when I saw what a difference it made in my family's life, I thought, okay, there's something to this. It's not just a recreational product. There's something to be had here to help not just the elderly, but for medicinal purposes in general. And that is what actually catapulted me into the cannabis industry in Oklahoma.
So once you saw the benefits, how did you get started?
Well, I was connected pretty politically and had a good understanding of the regulations and the laws that were being written and what had passed. And just, my core competency being business management, I wasn't looking at this industry from a standpoint of I'm going to be a grower or a processor. I was looking at it like this is an industry where people who for so long have been operating illegally, correct? Now they are able to have a legitimate business and operate on the legal side. And there are going to be some aspects of what it takes to do that, primarily paperwork, business stuff that they just want to grow or they just want to manufacture products and be able to sell it and help people. So I wanted to utilize my core competency and my skills in order to better those new business people in this industry that maybe weren't used to paying taxes on marijuana or having to have that licensing and that paperwork. And that's really where I stepped in and got my feet wet, so to speak, in this business, is just by being the backbone and the support of those who are new to the industry.
So what is Zliderz?
Zliderz is a nano-emulsified CBD or THC product that is a liquid. It is completely tasteless. And it can be taken as just a 10 milligram. It allows the patient to dose themselves. That was the premises of it. When I looked at helping my mom, like I told you before, I couldn't give her a 50 milligram brownie or 100 milligram gummy, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are people who truly want to use this, not for euphoria or to get high, but truly for a medicinal purpose. And I couldn't find products out there that had any, if you're not a connoisseur of cannabis, you may not care for the taste, the distillate taste it leaves in your mouth. So I worked with a really good lab friend of mine who was able to actually come up with the product. And it is, we are patent pending right now, to where you could have a nano-emulsified to where it skipped the GI tract, goes straight into your bloodstream, and you actually feel the effects of either the CBD or the THC within 10 minutes max. You get the relief you need, and it's not having to go through the liver. So Um, we now have 10 milligrams, 50 milligrams, and 100. At this point, 100 milligrams is really as high as we go because it is just a small amount of liquid. If you want to put it in a drink, you can put it in food. You can just, a lot of people just take it and just down it. But you can obviously use as many as what your preference is. Again, allowing the patient to be able to self-dose.
Mm-hmm. How did, what was the R&D process like when you were developing the product with your friend?
Well, it was, I remember one time that our lab guy accidentally took like 3,500 milligrams at once, and we didn't hear from him. We heard from him about 4 days later after we thought he was dead. But no, that R&D process can be very comical, to say the least, but done in a very professional and a lab setting. It went very well. It was timely to come up with what we needed. And we were able to put this emulsified product in creams, lotions to get a topical relief also. So it's been real interesting and actually very exciting, and it's gratifying. It's gratifying not being personally being a cannabis user, but to be able to take something and create relief to make people better. It's I love seeing those who have been in this industry, maybe since they were teenagers, who knows, long time, right? But now being able to do well by doing good. And that's what I love seeing from it.
Do you manufacture the product, or do you use third-party manufacturers?
No, our lab manufactures it here in Oklahoma.
Is it only available in Oklahoma, or is it available to other states?
Well, right now it's available in Oklahoma. We are looking at different contracts with processors out of state, since that's how we would have to do it, is get with a lab or processor out of state, since you're not, can't cross state lines with THC products.
So you're a serial entrepreneur. How many businesses have you founded over the years?
Probably 4 to 5. And, a couple of them have failed, which I think is not a bad thing. It's a hard thing when you're going through it, but part of being an entrepreneur and part of being successful is knowing what not to do. And how do you really figure out what not to do unless you do it and you fail? So I try to, and especially in this industry, I would not call anything I've done failures. I would call it very expensive lessons that had to be learned. And that's with any industry, right? But for sure cannabis.
Hey, there's a lot of trial and error happening in the cannabis industry right now.
Absolutely. You are correct.
Did you say that you had another cannabis business as well?
Well, it's more of a marketing firm that's Canna Collective, that I like to think of like a group participation organization where cannabis businesses are able to market to each other, and it's not meant to be to consumer. From business to consumer, but really business to business. And we also have just recently started supporting a new industrial lab in Oklahoma City that I'm so very excited about. We have a physician who has a couple of physicians that have been with the Research Foundation here in Oklahoma for years on the clinical side, clinical laboratory. And it's exciting to see medical professionals cross over into the cannabis industry, because with that comes into a lot of tried and true practices, number one, right? And you've got a lot of critical integrity that comes along with that due to the rigorous regulations they're used to being under in the medical field already. Being able to pass that experience over into cannabis, I think does nothing more than it levels up. It legitimizes. It causes for, I hope, for other cannabis labs to be on your game, because we need to raise the standard in this industry.
Mm-hmm. Talking about raising the standard in the industry, how would you describe the cannabis industry in Oklahoma right now?
Oh my gosh, it's booming. It's absolutely booming. I know a lot of people refer to it as the Wild West. I mean, there's reason to say that, right? Because there's a lot going on. I think Oklahoma did a very good job at being liberal enough on their medicinal side that they didn't necessarily have to consider going recreational. I mean, look at, I see them each year applying more knowledge. We're growing as an industry, so you figure out what this is working, this is not working, what needs to be done now. But take, for instance, in California, I think you're pretty regulated on the amount of marijuana you can grow. Here in Oklahoma, there's no regulation on the amount of cannabis you can grow. It's as much as you can do. And I think we have several really good new laws that they're hoping to pass that will allow. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it changes the industry, and we should have that information pretty soon, whether we're going to be making some of these new changes come November. But I think the industry it's done a lot for Oklahoma. It's brought a lot of taxable revenue, and I see over the last probably 6 months, even what I would call a reckoning in this industry, that we are really seeing the men being separated from the boys. In Oklahoma, it was a very low cost to entry for this business. Our licenses are not very expensive in comparison to other states. So, if you had $2,500, $3,000 and you could get a lease, or you knew how to grow something, you could get in this business. So I think that now, as time has gone on, and it's not really just about the product or the weed that you're growing, it's more about you truly are operating a business. And there are things that come with that you must do. So I think you see a weeding out, so to speak, of those who are really equipped to be entrepreneurs in this industry and those who aren't.
As the industry is sort of shaking out, did you have to be pretty careful in selecting who you were going to source material from to create your products?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And those, having everything tested, having your SOPs, especially since with ours, we were applying for a patent with how we were doing our nano-emulsified product. But for sure, quality is everything, and it doesn't take long at all to figure out. Do you have quality ingredients? Are you working with a company that can provide this to you? Again, just kind of leveling up what is expected. If you were in an industry that was non-cannabis, there's a lot of things you couldn't get away with. And in this industry too, that is happening. Those jokers, they're not getting away with things any longer.
Do you see yourself as an ingredient manufacturer going forward, or do you see taking the nano-emulsion and creating beverages or other products?
I love the idea of doing the beverages. We're working on launching a water called Humanity that you'll see on the market soon, which of course that will be outside of Oklahoma. It's a CBD water. And I also like the idea of working in the clinical space with our product. Just being tasteless at a smaller milligram, truly using it for what I said I really wanted to be in the industry in the first place, was for medicinal use and to give relief to patients.
Okay. One of the things that drew me to you and your story was that you wanted to inspire other women in business. Do you see an opportunity for women in cannabis?
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. Women in cannabis can do everything that men can. And I would like to say this also about Oklahoma. I haven't viewed this, my optic of this industry in Oklahoma is not that it's a man's world, so to speak. We have a lot of women. Actually, the first kitchen that created the edibles was a female. We have a ton of females that own grows here. They may not actually be the grower, but they own the grow. We have token Okies, which is what we call them, who need to be on the license for anyone, foreign investor, et cetera, coming in from out of state. Lots of females are participating in this industry. And I think that it brings a unique perspective because a lot of the growers just want to grow, or they just want to make a product. They don't necessarily want to do the business side of it. And I think that females in cannabis have done a magnificent job of trying to corner this market.
You had said previously that investors are interested in female-founded startups. Is that also true for cannabis? And what is it about female-founded startups that is drawing the eyes of investors?
Well, in this industry, I don't necessarily think that investors are more interested in female startups versus males.
Hmm.
In general, yes, I have said that. And I think a lot of it is because there are some benefits that come with having a minority diversity factor in your
Hmm.
business. Everything from if you're applying for different contracts or grants, there is a point system that is used in receiving funding. If you're female, if you have your ethnicity is Native American, Hispanic, or African American. So definitely, I think right now, currently, there's a little over 1,800 new businesses founded every day in the U.S. Of that, 4 out of 10 are females, and of those four, 65% are minority women. So I think that speaks a lot, especially during this pandemic that we're trying to come on the backside of right now. A lot of females who thought that they maybe wanted to have their own business or be self-employed were given that opportunity when they were sent home. And all
Hmm.
of a sudden you see women's side hustles now becoming their full-time careers.
Hmm.
And I think that also is very telling of what we should expect in the near future.
So how did you manage the pandemic, keep your businesses going and make sure to move forward over the last couple of years?
Well, my two core competencies were, like I had mentioned, healthcare technology. So I have been remote with that company. My employees are all over the United States and they all work from home. So that's the model already. Also, being in the medical field, that was considered an essential business, right?
Hmm.
So both that company and my building maintenance firm, which is obviously COVID, we had plenty of work to do, right, with
Right.
sterilization and sanitization. So I was very fortunate in that my both of my businesses were considered essential. So we saw no slowdown whatsoever. Now, what I also did see pick up, especially in Oklahoma, was the marijuana businesses, and that is because in Oklahoma, marijuana was considered essential.
Hmm.
So since it is medicinal, it skyrocketed. It
Hmm.
absolutely skyrocketed. I saw no slowdown. I saw revenues being elevated, and there hasn't been in my opinion, a slowdown since then.
Is Zliderz available in retail shops, or is it an e-commerce play?
No, it's just dispensaries.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yeah, in retail. Yeah,
When did you found Zliderz?
it was in November of 2020.
Oh, okay. What was that, ramp up like? Was it just that you saw, I mean, I get that you saw how it helped your mother, but what was it like trying to ramp up a cannabis business, amidst a pandemic?
Well, it actually not. I mean, any business is hard, right?
Hmm.
But this was it was a lot of fun. It was exciting. It was. I just remember when my dear friend came to me, who is my partner and ran the lab, and said, "I have this idea." And what do you think about this? And having a tasteless product that can be self-dosed. At the same time, this is when I had detoxed my mom off of narcotics, and I got it. Like it
Hmm.
clicked. Like I said, this is something that, although it's not my core competency, I haven't been in this industry for any length of time. I can see a need. And generally, what we know in business, regardless of the type, is if you create something that people need, they will come. It will
Hmm.
sell. And that's what we've seen here.
Do you have an opportunity to connect with your customers and see how you're having a direct impact on their health?
Oh, I do, because they tell us. They
Hmm.
email us. They from social media. They write us. We have wonderful, wonderful reviews and get to get one-on-ones with the clients. There's nothing better than for someone to say, I've ran out. I've got to have more. I get to sleep without pain. I haven't slept in 2 decades. Like,
Hmm.
this has been a life changer for me. You're talking about a product that cost, you know, $3,
Mhm.
$4. I mean, it's minimal to be able to see something of such a low cost, be able to make such a tremendous difference in someone's life.
Mhm. Um, what is the plan going forward? Do you continue what is the plan for Zliderz, and do you plan expansion in the cannabis industry?
I do, but from a CBD perspective, we would
Mhm.
like I mentioned earlier, to be more on the clinical lab side, so that we are able to offer our nano product that's tasteless into medications or products that are being sold like in a Walgreens or Walmart or whatever it may be that you don't have to have a medical card to buy. We see a lot of value there, especially with our product.
What is the relationship like with dispensaries trying to make sure that your product is available, marketed in a good area so that way it's seen by customers? How does that side of the business work?
Very well. The dispensaries are great to work with. They
Mhm.
truly are. It's medicinal, so you see that they really form relationships with their patients that come in and day out, or how often it is, and they have a true desire to really want to serve and to help their patients feel better. And so I love working with those dispensaries that for such a low dosage to where a patient can self dose. There aren't a ton of those products on the market. I mean, there are a couple, but mainly they're a syrup or like a gummy, right? Like a 10
Mhm.
milligram gummy. But you still have that distillate taste involved in those products. And so we get really good feedback that those patients that come in because they need relief, but they're not previous cannabis users, so they don't have a great appreciation for that distillate taste,
Mhm.
really like our product since it's tasteless.
Um, pardon me. Uh, you said you work in medical technology as well as you have another company in sanitation. What is the cannabis industry like compared to, like a medical tech? Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot of stories about how it's a new industry, a developing industry, but it's also very collaborative. What has your experience in Oklahoma been in cannabis?
Um, well, for the most part, it's new for everyone, right?
Hmm.
So it's like a whole lot of business owners just trying to figure it out, work
Hmm.
together, network. Think about this for a moment. Pre legalization, I'm not saying there wasn't a network, but it was more private, right? It was more underground. Like being able to watch the just the different networking groups come online, being able to see the different events that are held where people can come and work together, both B2B and B2C. Just the collaboration that, from a competitive standpoint, very open and open to helping one another and just figuring out, like in Oklahoma, how can we get this industry right? How can we get it right, full of integrity, and do what we're supposed to be doing, which is serving the patient? I think that gets, Oklahoma is a non qualifying state. So you don't have to have some specific type of healthcare issue to get a license. Again, why I said it's very liberal, to be
Hmm.
honest. Um, so it's been really neat to see everyone like trying to work together in an arena that is considered right now to be the Wild West, because everyone is trying to figure it out, right?
Hmm.
But there have been, like, you've got groups like Women of Cannabis. There are so many different online organizations and uh, geared toward helping the end user, helping the patient, and making sure they're getting what they need.
Hmm. Given your political connections and how liberal the state of the industry is already, do you see it becoming recreational anytime soon in Oklahoma?
I don't. I
Yeah.
really don't. I'm not saying that it won't, but I just feel like um, the laws are already so relaxed. I mean,
Hmm.
both for the patient side and for the business side.
Okay.
So, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Um, and do you have any expectations as to when it'll go federally legal?
I would make the assumption in the next probably 3 to 5 years.
Hmm.
And I think then we will see the industry take on a huge makeover
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah. Um, so as a serial entrepreneur, what other markets, what other ideas do you have out there that you're thinking of, spinning off into a new business?
Mm, right now, I just really would like to focus on helping the industrial lab arena in
Hmm.
cannabis have consistent results, consistent because right now even dispensaries can make pre-rolls now that they sell, so therefore they have to be tested. So
Hmm.
we've got dispensaries, processors, as well as grows that need testing, and just having a facility that you can depend on is going to be accurate every single time. I would like to see a lot of focus on changing the integrity of our testing.
Okay. For women that are maybe interested in starting their own business, you know, is there any advice that you have for them, or how can you kind of sort of help people kind of get over the hump in terms of their apprehension in starting their own business?
I think it's really important to seek wise counsel. So a mentor, someone who's already in the business, like do proper investigation on what it is, because our perception is our reality.
Hmm.
And it's a horrible thing when you find out your perception was wrong, right?
Hmm.
And you get in there and it doesn't turn out like you thought it was going to be. I think in the cannabis industry in Oklahoma, that has happened to quite a few people. And I just think more preparation on the front end will allow you to be creative and successful on the back end.
So, who is your mentor?
Well, I have a couple of females. Are you pertaining to the cannabis industry,
Yeah, or just in
or
general,
or
like,
just?
yeah,
Um,
just,
well, I love working with the women in purse power, which is women owned or CEOs or boards that have women on them that come together and support each other in terms of our economy and supporting women owned businesses and peer groups. And so I look to other women CEOs that have had to make the same decisions I'm making, or maybe have made them different, that I can learn from. And I always, especially in this industry, there's so much that I don't know because it's not necessarily where I've come from.
mhm,
Um, just figure out on making sure you get an answer that is correct.
mhm.
To me, that's really important, due diligence in anything we do, but especially in growing for females in growing a cannabis business.
Who have been some of those people in the cannabis industry that have really helped you find the right direction?
Well, I've looked to different owners of businesses that have maybe chains of dispensaries, to see what have you encountered. What have you found? Some pitfalls have been, some bumps. How did you handle them? So I've made sure, like my end client, that I've had good conversations with them, as well as those people who are growing the product. I look to those people to see what is, because that's our core ingredient, right? When you're doing manufacturing and you're processing. So I make sure and keep in really good communication with those people also, so that I always know what is new on the horizon, to make sure that we keep up with the change that's going on. Because in this industry, it changes quickly.
Over the last 18 months or so, what pitfalls have you run into as Zliderz in the cannabis industry?
Well, packaging. I would say packaging was our biggest one, because we had to make sure we had a packaging that didn't leak, because the cannabis, the THC would literally eat through the packaging, and so we had a little bit of R&D to do on that. And actually, because of the pandemic, getting our equipment in a timely manner was an issue. It worked itself out, but it wasn't. It was definitely an unexpected supply chain issue to make sure that we had everything needed. Once the product is made and packaged, there's no lack for need for it.
Hmm.
But you know what? Proper planning. If you don't properly plan, you will learn.
Yeah. Well, I heard packaging has been a big issue for a bunch of people because like sanitizer companies, a lot of people were buying up a lot of that plastic and it was just unavailable for a couple of years.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Luckily enough, I was able to find, like I refer to a company called Lifted Logics,
Hmm.
and they supply not only legal counsel, cannabis legal counsel, as well as they have those warehouses and connections to the packaging, and you just have to really work to find the businesses who have what you need. And again, that comes from just seeking wise counsel, asking around, just not jumping at the first thing that you find, and just making sure you spend a good amount of time for your due diligence.
No, a lot of what you say in terms of seeking wise counsel and kind of leaning on other individuals to help you create the business, it's just refreshing to hear, because you hear of so many people that start the business, they think they know what's best, and that's just how they're going to run the business one way or the other.
Correct. And what I have found is there are certain areas of what you want to do. You may know what's best. You really may. But inevitably, because it is a business, and it's a business that 3 years, we're all fairly new to, right? Mm-hmm. There has been a lot to learn for sure.
Okay. Well, before we get out of here, is there anything in particular that you want to make sure that the CEN audience knows about your business?
Wow, just that, we put a lot of heart, a lot of love, a lot of care into our product, and that, our goal is to be able to allow the patients, like I said, to be able to self-dose and get the exact amount that they need. It's a pleasant experience being tasteless, and that we love to hear great feedback.
Well, I mean, speaking of great feedback, did your mother at least leave you a positive review?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Very
she
good.
calls me. I'm running out now. I need more. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's going so well for her. That's encouraging.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, for Ginger Sloan, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.